to start our meeting talking about students and self-harming. And she's, correct me if I'm wrong, she's doing part of this for her civic grant presentation. So we're also going to be a test run for her. So please make sure we're on our best behavior for her so we can give her good feedback and ask good questions of her. You're going to do a great job. And then when she's done, Ms. Phillips has some other things to add to the presentation on the topic, not necessarily Amanda's presentation. And then I have a couple more things, actually one other thing. I'm just going to say it now. Please remember, anything said in here today needs to be confidential, and I would like no student names used because we have visitors in the room, okay? And we have to keep all this confidential. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Wolf, and I'm an 8th grade student here at our school campus. For those of you who don't know, I'm continuing the civics project I did last year on self-harm and suicide awareness in schools. This is a topic that I am very passionate about, especially after having various personal experiences with it. As many of you already know, this is a very common issue on our campus, and it's something that we can and need to fix. Today, I would like to address self-harm and suicide, starting with self-harm. Self-harm is a coping mechanism. It's not usually meant for suicide, but rather to harm the surface of the skin in an attempt to gain a feeling or to cover up feelings. Since its use as a coping mechanism, it is a distraction, in most cases, in order to avoid other feelings or situations, even for a short amount of time. Around 70% of teens, ages 11 to 16, have self-harmed or are self-harming, and some continue to do so until their late 20s. There are many different ways that students can self-harm, including, yet not limited to, pinching or scratching, impact with objects or themselves, cutting, ripping at your skin, carving, interfering with the healing process, burning, starving or vomiting, breaking bones on purpose, or overdose with the intent of harm rather than death. Typically, students will do from around 2 to 4 of these, if not more. As you are probably aware, the most common methods of self-harm are cutting, starving or vomiting, and interfering with healing. All of these different methods are destructive, although students can, with some help, overcome this and find new, positive ways of coping. There are a lot of reasons as to why someone might hurt themselves, although a major factor that leads to self-harm, and in some cases even suicide, is that teens, especially at this age, don't know how to handle and deal with their emotions, and can end up harming themselves as a coping mechanism. Although this is counterproductive and ultimately emotionally damaging in the long run, some students may feel as if it's the only thing that can help them deal with their negative emotions. Some other reasons include low self-esteem, being bullied or discriminated, severe illness, worry over sexuality, divorce or family conflicts, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, social pressures, loneliness or isolation, someone else that they're close to is harming themselves, or relationship problems. Usually there's a combination of these things affecting students and can push them to a breaking point in which they feel that the only thing that can help them is to harm themselves. Although you can't solve students' problems for them, you can encourage them to talk to a professional or a counselor, or even to their parents. As you all know, suicide is when somebody kills themselves. It's a devastating occurrence and immediately affects at least 6 people. Here in the United States, it's the 10th leading cause of death, and a suicide attempt occurs every 12 and a half minutes, and it's only increasing. Although 1 in 25 attempts becomes a suicide, it is still a very horrific occurrence and is something that needs to be discussed so we can prevent it from happening, especially in our own campus. Sorry. There are many ways in which someone can commit suicide, some more lethal than others. Some of these include shooting yourself, jumping from high distances, hanging, purposely overdosing, drowning, and cutting yourself. All of these are used very commonly when someone commits suicide. Suicide is the last straw. It's what can happen when someone decides they have finally had enough of everything that they're dealing with and they're going through, and that life isn't worth living anymore. their only way to get rid of bad feelings that they have and that their loved ones would be better off if they were dead. Usually, if someone attempts suicide, they have depression to some degree, and if possible, although it isn't likely, they need help immediately. When someone is harming themselves or even considering suicide, there are usually physical signs that you can see by their behavior. Some ways a student might be acting if they are self-harming is that they might seem a lot quieter or less energetic. They also might seem more tired, and their grades might be dropping. They might be late to their classes and seem to be more covered up and anxious. Although, if a student shows these signs, it does not mean that they are, yet you should ask them about it because you might be able to help them no matter what the circumstance is. Almost everyone who harms themselves attempts to hide it, so that way it won't make others upset or worried. Students may wear longer, more covering clothing to hide their skin from being seen, or they might fake being happy in order to hopefully convince others that they are fine. Since many people who self-harm take so many precautions to hide what's going on, it can be extremely difficult to know who's doing it and who isn't. If you do find out a student is harming themselves or you suspect they are, there are things that you can do. You might try offering them alternatives, such as talking to a professional or a school psychologist like Ms. Phillips. Exercising might help, or writing their feelings down in a journal. You can also offer them other outlets, such as writing, drawing, singing, or even playing an instrument. Another extremely beneficial thing that you can do is to just simply let them know that they will get through what they're going through and that you believe in them. You could also try talking with them at lunch or before or after school to see if they will open up to you, and you might be able to help them sort out some of their negative emotions that they're feeling. Another thing that I believe will honestly help students here is if there was a program where students could go talk about what they're going through and learn more positive and beneficial ways to cope with their emotions, so they don't result to self-harm or even suicide. As I had stated before, a main factor that leads to students harming themselves is that it's a coping mechanism, and if they had a program that could help them find other coping mechanisms and to let them get out their bad feelings before they become destructive, it can only be positive here at our school site. And as from a survey done last year, I was able to find out that 27 out of 32 students would participate in the program, and 32 out of 32 students thought it'd be a good program for our school. As a student who has gone through and overcome self-harm, I think it would be a beneficial program and that it would help a lot of students. I also think that as a team, staff and students, we can create a more positive school environment and ultimately a place where most people want to come and feel excited to come. I honestly think that we can get help for all of the students all of our students who are going through this, and that we can make a huge impact here at our school, especially when it comes to self-harm and suicide occurrences. Thank you for your time and have a fantastic rest of your day.